Yes, welcome everyone to our next CMX Connect book club. I'm delighted that we're here to talk to David Siegel about his book, Decide and Conquer. And for those maybe who haven't come along to a CMX event before, there's the book. CMX helping community professionals thrive. You know, we're growing and learning together. And that's definitely the point of this book club. Lots of important books out there. And we've been going through as many as possible, loads more to come to help us all grow and learn. And we have events all over the world, mixture of virtual and thankfully now more in person starting to come back. We're thinking for our next book club event that we are going to dive a little bit deeper into John O'Bacon's book, People Powered. I know lots of us have read it and we interviewed John last year to go through the book. But we're going to get a smaller group together for those that are interested. And the ask there is that everyone really reads the book, and we're going to see who's been using it and what lessons have been learned. Also, a reminder that CMX Summit is back to being in person this year. The last time I saw my fellow Connect hosts was 2019. So I'm hoping to get out to California. Like lots of people, starting to think about travel again. I haven't really done any yet. But getting out to California to meet lots of people in the community industry is high on my list. So if you're thinking about your next trip, highly recommend going out. It is a hybrid event, so there will be virtual options as well. All right, what else? Laurie, do you want to say anything about your Denver chapter?
I sure do. We are 150 members strong and growing. We've got folks working in Web3, software development, associations, education, and nonprofits. We're community managers and builders, founders, presidents, and CEOs, executive directors, marketers, entrepreneurs, and consultants. And I'd like to put in a plug for our next event, which is this Wednesday at May 11th at noon with my dear colleague, Samantha Venya-Logan. She's the principal of Socially Constructed, and she will show us how to deepen our understanding of community using social scientific concepts to better manage our communities. So please come with your pain points and your daily interactions and learn more about how to manage that. Everyone who attends will receive worksheets to help them use the frameworks that she's going to provide, as well as a discount on her upcoming Magnetic Community Brand Workbook. So we will post the link to that soon. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, no, thank you, Laurie. And yeah, so on to the main agenda. We're here tonight to talk to David Siegel. I'm joined by Tom and Laurie, who are also going to help me ask questions. We have plenty of questions, but we are also really keen to hear from all of you that have come along this evening, this morning, whatever it is for you. So ask your questions in the Q&A, and we would love to get you up on the stage as well to ask your question. Fancy doing that, we will ask for you. So David is the CEO of Meetup. For those that don't know, it's written on his t-shirt, the largest platform for finding and building communities. You know, and that's why we're all here. So this makes total sense. He has 25 years of experience, various organizations, CEO of Investopedia, and before that, president of Seeking Alpha. He also holds a BA in philosophy, politics, and economics. He teaches as well. And I know from reading the book that he's keen to do more teaching. Maybe that will be his next role, spending more time on that. He also hosts the podcast Keep Connected, dedicated to the power of community. And of course, he is the author of Decide and Conquer, 44 decisions that make or break all leaders. So welcome, David.
It is great to be here. Thank you for introducing me and telling everyone how old I am.
Yeah, we're all getting there.
I deeply enjoyed Meetup and community and CMX. I was at CMX in 2019. It was an amazing experience. Got to spend time with Derek and with David Spinks and the whole amazing group. And I'm just always blown away by everything that you do, everything that community leaders do, and I'm just excited to be a part of this. Thank you.
Oh, great. And yeah, congrats on the book. It's a great read. And, it's quite refreshing, I think, from what we read is quite often pretty dry industry literature, and it's a real page turner. Like there's, a lot of drama in the book, that you went through. So taking over Meetup CEO, navigating a pretty tricky, rocky road around WeWork, the leadership team there, the sale process, and then after all that, kind of plunged headlong into COVID. And of course, running an organization that's focused on bringing people together in person, yeah, those two things kind of clash a little bit. So from that, though, you managed to produce a book, which, for starters, that's pretty good going. I think for most people would have finished this off. And some of people might have missed at the beginning. But
Jamie, the book was therapy for me. It was like literally like you're told. Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize, Jamie, because I know you haven't gotten the question yet. But some people get exhausted by doing things. I needed something to distract me from just the craziness in the early days of the pandemic. And anyway, it was therapy for me. It was great, very, very healthy. So I couldn't have survived without writing the book, actually.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, we're all definitely benefited from that. And for some people that missed at the beginning, we played George Michael and Freedom. I asked you to choose a couple of bits of music. We didn't get a chance to hear the other one, which was Coldplay, Viva La Vida. But I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the choices of those two tunes.
Okay, sure. So, Meetup very much had incredible, as you know, culture clashes with WeWork, and there were ways in which WeWork dictated a lot of things, and we felt like at times we were like the slave to our owner as opposed to the supporter, like the slave. So when we finally were able to when I made the announcement, as you might remember in the book, when I made the announcement that WeWork is separating from Meetup, there was a woman in the back, an engineer, who said, "Thank God, yes!" She was so happy when the announcement was made. In fact, we had multiple people that quit Meetup solely because they hated being a part of WeWork and its shenanigans. If anyone has seen We Crashed, if anyone has read $1 Billion Loser, or The Cult of We, or the Hulu documentary, you'll know exactly what I mean in terms of all the craziness. It was so painful. So we finally separated. The song that I wanted to do as the entree for all employees was Freedom. And before it started, I was wearing a WeWork t-shirt. Actually, that same WeWork t-shirt that, if you remember the story from the book, that before my interview with Adam, I got the book off of someone, the shirt off of someone's back, and I put it on. I tell a story if people want, and I had that shirt on, and I throw that shirt off. The Meetup shirt is on, and screaming Freedom. And I felt like it was similar to that scene with Mel Gibson in Braveheart. You know what I'm talking about? The scene with Mel Gibson in Braveheart.
I know all about
it. So we kind of did that. So that's the story with Freedom, and the background of Coldplay is many of you haven't had this experience probably, but like I'm about to stand up in front of 250 employees for the first time. And the day that they're introducing me as the new CEO, it's like really stressful. And everyone's going to jump to conclusions, not in like 10 minutes, but in like the first 30 seconds of me opening my mouth. Before I even open my mouth, they're going to jump to conclusions of some kind, right? So I need to like be what I thought my best self, my energetic self, whatever it is. So the pump up music that I always used before I play sports or before I was doing this was, dun, 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 dun. So Viva La Vida. So that's the music that I chose. So that's my pump up music. I didn't do that before this conversation. I guess I'm already pre-pumped.
Good to hear. And what about during the writing? Do you listen to music or anything like that while you're actually writing?
It's pretty different than most people. The way I wrote the book was very atypical, extremely atypical. In 6 to 8 weeks, I wrote 75,000 words. I literally, it was like catharsis. The COVID started, we were home. I had 3 hours plus more free time because I wasn't commuting anymore. And I just got up and I would have so much energy and stress. I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I just needed some outlet for it. So I just started putting stories down and recording different things that was happening and just putting lots of different things, writing them down. And no music, don't listen to music when I write. But then sometimes I would like sit on a chair, like on my deck with I wrote a third of it just typing into my little phone, just literally just typing random things in. And it was just like this vomitacious mess of just stories and this and that. And then a friend of mine introduced me to the way you're supposed to write a book, of course, is you write like the first chapter, you write the table of contents, you find a book agent, and you do the whole thing. But like in the book, I talk about, going around the system and not doing things always like by the book, shall we say. So I just instead wrote this messy manuscript. A friend of mine introduced me to one publisher, HarperCollins. I sent them this manuscript with like tons of grammatical and spelling and all this other stuff. And they read it and they were like, this is good. This is good. Could we publish this book? And I was like, okay. And they're like, but this is very messy. We have to spend a while cleaning it up. So, they cleaned it up, but that's the story.
There's kind of stream of consciousness,
very, very
which I'm sure got the guts of the narrative and stuff across, which people who know me and know my voice, they're like, I hear you talking, and like, in terms of the things that I write, it's like literally just the way I speak. Right. Well, they always say that. I mean, I did creative writing masters, and they say to find your voice and use your voice, or write in your voice. So yeah, you've clearly done that. All right. Well, let's get into the book a bit. I mean, I think one thing that took away from it, is such an incredible series of events. And there's a quote that you have on page 86, which is talking about like really just like that stress level, realizing. So where is it? The honeymoon was over, and after 90 days, already feeling burnt out, was waking up in the middle of every night, worried about the endless decisions I had to make every day. And, I went from feeling as though I was the greatest CEO on the planet, if I might be the worst CEO now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would you do it all again if you had the chance?
I mean, the answer is yes. I thought, so before this, as I wrote in the book, I was a CEO of Investopedia, which I loved. I loved it because of culture building, and I liked the mission a lot, educating the world about finance. That was meaningful to me. And I thought that mission like really resonated for me, but not even close to Meetup's mission, not even close. Like there were times in my life that I felt really lonely and I didn't have community. But thank God for various reasons, I have community today. So like I have gained so much, I've learned so much, I've met exceptional people. I mean, the people on this call right now, the 28 people that are here, like anyone involved in community, personally, in my experience, they're like exceptional people. Like hands down, the people who are involved in community building are unselfish, they're caring, they love human beings, they love trying to help people as much as they can. They believe in the power of like people and communications and connections. So like I met amazing people through this journey at Meetup. So hell yeah, I would do this again. And even if it was worse, I would do it again. And it was a huge blow to my ego. I never felt like I failed as much as I did kind of at Meetup and certainly in the early stages in my entire career. And it was very hard and extraordinarily stressful. But yes, amazing growth life experience. I'm so lucky to have had it, and continue to have it.
Right. But perhaps your last CEO role that you've hinted at in the book too. So
Jamie,
maybe that's coincidental.
It's not coincidental, honestly. It's really not. Like I want to be, you see from my book, I'm like obsessed with transparency and openness about everything. This job has been so monumentally stressful for all the reasons that you said, both dealing with potentially Meetup, an iconic brand and business that's affects the lives of millions, potentially being shut down or likely even being shut down, and dealing with the pandemic and dealing with culture clashes and like hundreds of people like hating me, like really disliking me. And that's really hard because I consider myself like a nice person. And it's just like everyone hated me, like because I was like destroying, when I first joined Meetup, you're trying to destroy the company, you're trying to turn into a business, and we are a business. We're not a nonprofit. So that was so traumatic that whenever this ends, and maybe it's not for another 5 or 10 years, maybe it's in a couple of years, I don't know, but I don't think I can handle becoming a CEO again. Here's the thing, Jamie, and everyone, I put my heart and soul into my job so much. I just don't feel like I have it in me to do it again in a full and complete way. Now, after a year or two of not doing anything, being on boards or whatever, or whatever the heck I'm going to be doing, professoring, whatever that is, I could get crazy bored and want to go back. But in my head, I'm like, what I've said to myself is, I can't imagine running a company again, a different company, because I can't imagine thinking about that company that's more important than what I'm doing at Meetup. And I can't imagine being in a role that's not a CEO position. So that doesn't really leave me with much.
Right. Yeah, and I think that it's a nice segue, because one of the things that Tom and Laurie and I all picked out as a sort of question or a theme was around navigating this desire to be liked, while needing to make these difficult decisions. And I think for a lot of people here who are running communities, it's probably a little bit similar in that, you're giving yourself away a lot, and, you're dealing with a lot of people and things like that. And so, yeah, I wondered about this, navigating that and being comfortable with being unpopular, as Laurie was asking, or, how do you overcome this need to be liked? Because we all do.
Yeah, I love a great call out. Wow, thank you for saying that. Okay, so first of all, I think it's important to realize that your primary job is to be a leader of your community in terms of a job. My primary job is to be a leader of Meetup. My primary job is not to be liked. So it's just like order of operations, Maslow's hierarchy. What's the top thing? The top thing is to do the best possible job for your organization, whatever your organization looks like, a company, a Meetup, a community group, your organization, etc. And if you think back to the types of people, and you're right, the people that are community leaders tend to be nicer, thoughtful, caring type people who also want to be liked, etc. When I think back about just leadership in general, I made so many mistakes by wanting to be liked and wanting people to just making the wrong decision, frankly, because I try to find let's compromise. I think this, you think this, let's compromise and find that. And the compromise position is almost always like the worst position. I guess what it comes to is when you have enough community experience, you have to have confidence in yourself. And you have to have confidence in your decision making. And you have to have confidence that you've been there and you've done that and you've seen the same things over and over again. And if someone's going to suggest something and you know it's not going to work, it's not your job to make them feel like that it's their idea. It's your job to say, I totally understand it. I totally appreciate why you're saying that. And I'm very sorry, but we're going to be making this decision. So it's like, be comfortable making a decision as an island, being comfortable doing something that goes against the grain of almost everyone else, if not everyone else, and give the context of why. Don't just make the decision, but give the reason why. So what gives me the ability to do it is just always give the why behind something, because that gives the context of why we're going to be doing something, to understand that leadership is not a democracy, and the worst form of leadership is when you kind of like, let's get everyone's opinion and let's vote on what the right decision is. That doesn't necessarily, everyone chooses the weakest things when you vote on the right decision. People are afraid to take risks. And when you're afraid to take risks, you don't get amazing results either, because everything comes down to like risk minimization, and that's another thing about, if you're really nice, you end up minimizing risks, and that's not what's necessary for an organization. So, it's taken me a long time. It's taken me a long time to go onto like Glassdoor and see like negative things that people write about me. And I'm not saying it's all negative, of course, but like, and not have it hurt. It still does hurt. But I think a lot of things come to like personal integrity. And strangely, I feel like I have higher personal integrity. I have low personal integrity, let's put it this way, if every single person thinks that you're doing an amazing job and just says only high things about you. It means that you're not anything, you're not sticking to what you really believe and what you really stand for.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because in other parts of the book, so on page 46 and 47, you talk about this early stages with Meetup, where it was kind of more of a community driven, a bit like you're saying, where you got a lot of people involved in the work streams that you initially set up.
Yeah.
What to focus on and what to change. Now, that was obviously a conscious decision of, I'm going to rally people and make them feel like they are involved in what's going on. Versus what you're saying sometimes, where you do need to be more directional and sort of be more of that micromanager.
Okay, so let me say, oh, great call out. So I think that your approach to early leadership needs to be different than your approach to leadership on an ongoing basis. Right. And if you come in and you say, I'm just going to be an island and do my thing, that is a great way to lose a lot of people and lose a lot of followers. So I still think I made, honestly, the right decision. I made some mistakes, like actually we cut too few people. We should have done more. We're losing $20 million a year. We shouldn't have just cut 20 personnel. It should have been stronger, bigger than that, unfortunately. But it was very important to me to be as collaborative as possible to start, see where it goes, and then take action, because you need to have humility and understand that I don't know anything about Meetup. I don't know, coming into this role, these people have a combined, 500 years of experience, right? Combined. I have 0 in Meetup. So in the beginning, super collaborative, super asking people what we should kill. And someone said, kill this, 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 and this. And I stood up in front of everyone and said, we're going to kill this app that we're trying to start. We're going to kill this new business that we're trying to start. We're going to kill this new product we're going to start, da, da, da. And it was basically, because you said this, you said this, you said this. And it gave me the ability to do that. So I was not on an island around that. Later on, I did have to be an island about some other issues as well. And let me just say the last thing, Jamie, which is, in terms of being nice, I think the thing that also I really think a lot about is the big difference between being nice and being kind. And like, the goal isn't to be nice, the goal is to be kind. And sometimes going to someone and saying, I'm sorry, you're just not likely, you're not happy in this role, you're not succeeding in this role, you should start looking for something else. That may not be nice, it may make someone feel really bad, but it could be the kindest thing that you do. And just, if you're able to separate between nice and kind, it helps you to kind of be a little bit stronger in your approach.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. And I think, because be kind is obviously your first kind of leadership lesson, right, that you talk about in the book. And I think, like a lot of people, I had a similar sort of awakening of having a boss or someone who was up who was not kind, and kind of didn't bring out the best in you, right?
Right. And you want to do the opposite of that. You're like, oh, I had asshole bosses before. I can't be an asshole. I don't want to be an asshole.
Right.
But the problem is that you got to figure out how to just lead authentically, lead in as transparent. If you're transparent, if you're open and honest and transparent, people appreciate that. People appreciate that so oftentimes more than just being nice.
Right. And this is perhaps related to another thing you talk about, which is your headline test of integrity. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that operates in your mind?
Sure. So we do have these 6 values at Meetup. It's on page 104 of the hard book, and you could look at that for the list there. Jamie has an early copy of the book, so maybe on a different page than 104, and it's messed up down that. Anyway, so you could look at it there. But one of our like key principles is leading with integrity. I'll give you an example. Sometimes recently, an employee asked for options for something, and we knew that we're possibly going to be changing some things around in terms of options and just some other stuff. And we could have just given them what they asked for. But that just would have lacked integrity, because that wouldn't have been ultimately helpful for that person. We wanted to give the person the thing that will actually help them. And it's just about differentiating between not giving someone what they ask for, but understanding why they're asking for the thing and addressing it in that way. And I think, to me, integrity is not just doing what people want. It's just being as consistent as possible with kind of what your belief system is. But it's also understanding like the why behind it. Like I said, so here's an example. When we pivoted Meetup, and the pandemic hit, and a lot of old-time Meetuppers said we can't do virtual only Meetup events because we're IRL, we're about in-person only, etc. Now, and then said you're lacking integrity, David. And I like it when people push back because it's really healthy. You want them to push back because they're in their head, they're thinking things, and you want them to say every single thing that's on their heads. That's your goal. Say everything that's on your head. Like the bad thing is not thinking something. The bad thing is not expressing what you are thinking. That's the bad thing. So when people express something that's a negative, I'm all for it. So they said you're lacking integrity, David, by allowing only online events. So then I asked why. Go back to the why, and I said why? Why are in-person events so important to you? And the answer was in-person events are so important because there's so much more connections that happen. There's so much more relationships that happen. In-person is so much more than virtual. I said, okay, but we can't do in-person now. The only way people connect is that. So a lot of times when there's disagreement, you just have to go into the why, and sometimes you'll end up getting more agreement later on. And to me, that's what drives integrity, just having that conversation around the why.
Right on. And then, and you've talked just there about this pivot that obviously Meetup needed to make from, this side. Well, there was like a principle for Meetup around meeting in person and the value that has. And I think no one would disagree with that, but you had to pivot the company to doing things virtually. Now that we are coming back into in person, what's your feelings around this mix? Now, like the summit, the CMX Summit is going to be a hybrid event. And I've heard some people say, no, they just don't work. It's not good for either the in-person audience or the virtual audience. It's got to be this, it's got to be that. What do you think?
Okay, Jane. So there's a great cliche, which is necessity is the mother of innovation or invention. And we never would have allowed for virtual only groups if not for the pandemic. Never. Virtual only groups could be one of the best things to happen to Meetup in the last 5 years. And let me explain why. And they're so important to our future. So the reason why they're so important is because there are many people that don't necessarily, let's say I'm a parent of ADHD children.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Is it just me or is his audio bad for you as well? No, it just started to break up a little bit.
Okay. How is it now?
Keep going.
How is it now?
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me still or not?
It's sort of going in and out a bit.
Okay. Do you want me to, I could try my microphone. I could try this microphone and see. Hold on. I rejoined. Is that better or worse?
It's better.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, it wasn't you, it's me. It's not you, it's me, right? That's true. Okay. So, okay. One of the reasons why virtual is so important now is that it allows people who don't have a community, a local community, to be able to tap into an amazing community somewhere else. So I have ADHD kids, and I am in Albany, and Albany doesn't have a parents of ADHD group. I'm in Kansas City, or I'm in St. Louis, or other places. I can now be a part of that community. I can be a part of that group. And before that, you would never be able to do that on Meetup beforehand. That's so sad. The other thing is for people, like I was talking to a guy in Australia, and he was telling me that in Australia, transportation is very expensive, and there's big places for people to go around at long distances, and it allows for people not to have to pay a significant amount of money, potentially they're in the further away rural areas, to pay to come into the city for in-person. So it just gives access to so much more opportunity. I think the key, though, and the danger, of course, is that everything becomes pure virtual, right? In-person is so, I think in-person is still the ideal. If you have an opportunity to do in-person or Zoom, CMX, I'm going to be coming in person. I'm not going to do Zoom. Nothing wrong with people who do Zoom, but Zoom is still better, not Zoom, excuse me, Bevy is still better than, or virtual is still better than nothing. And for many people, it was a question of virtual versus nothing, and virtual is still significantly better. So Meetup will always have both in-person Zoom. There'll be hybrid groups. So I'm an organizer, and I have some events that are in person, I have some events that are virtual, and I think that will persist forever.
And do you run them combined though, like this sort of hybrid idea?
So I don't have an event currently that is both in person and virtual right now, because it requires, in my mind, really great infrastructure and a great technology, which Bevy, of course, has, in order to kind of make that an amazing experience. Because you really have to have moderators and people that are just dealing with both audiences in different ways. So I've not done that, but we are having a June 14th, 20th anniversary celebration for Meetup for 20 years. And we're going to make that a hybrid event. And that way, any Meetup member of our 56 million members can join into the event if they want to. And then a lot of people are going to be coming to New York as part of that big party too.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think you said loads of things that resonate. I mean, even before COVID, so I'm based in Scotland, and, you know, tapping into the sort of community network of people in the profession, there wasn't as many in Scotland. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to do this, you know, and sort of chat to you guys. I would start to do it with like an in-person audience where we'd have someone virtually, you know, talk to them. And it has its challenges, but yeah, I'm interested to see how far people go with hybrid, and CMX Summit will be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I think there's some things that are better when you're in remote. So for example, like Lori said, for introverts, hybrid can be, remote can be amazing. So as a professor, I actually taught this last semester hybrid, and all my classes were in person and there. But I really catered, quote unquote, to the people that were in the room, and the people that were remote, it was a harder experience for them to do it. But there's ways of making it both. It's just the key is not to make it the same experience.
Right.
So the key is to say it's going to be a very different experience, and we're comfortable with that. And there's some things that could be better remote, like chat and being able to go back and forth and chat in those kind of ways. And there's some things that are going to be worse, and we're not going to try to make it the same. To me, that's the key.
Right. And I was thinking about a series of events too. I mean, you mentioned in the book how one of your classes, you know, it was all Zoom when COVID happened, and you were finding it really hard. And then you met them all in person in Manhattan in the park. And then the Zoom events were all right after that, because you'd had that in real life.
Totally. In fact, at Meetup, we get together because we don't have an office yet. We're going to have an office finally in about a month and a half from now. But every month we still get together in person in a hotel. And that in-person gathering like strengthens us. And it makes the virtual and the remote meetings that we all have so much better and stronger because we had that in person. So exactly right. You don't need lots of in person. You don't need all in person, but to have some in person has this big spillover effect in kind of virtual and remote.
Right. Good stuff. All right. So a couple of other questions here. So one thing that I picked up on, and I'm not going to say the page number because you're right, I've probably got a slightly different copy here, but early in the book, you talk about strategy. And this is at the point where, you know, creating these work streams and things. And this really resonated because you say great strategy is actually quick execution and iteration. It's setting hypotheses, conducting tests to confirm or disprove those hypotheses, i.e., you know, you can come up with a hypothesis quite quickly. It's then about actually learning from it. And this is real strategy work, not what you put in a document and parade around as the company saver. Now, I think we've all seen this. I've probably done it myself, where you're like, I'm writing a strategy, and you go away, put yourself in a room for 6 weeks or something like that. And then you come off and you go, hey, here it is. And everyone's like, oh, great. And then it disappears. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about your experience with, you know, maybe mentoring other people or writing your own strategies.
Yeah, I think strategy sounds very sexy. All my students, for example, want to work in strategy. I want to work in strategic planning. I want to work in strategy consulting because it uses your brain. And people want to be able to think creatively and to use your brain and to think about big ideas and all the other things. And it's just very sexy sounding. But in reality, it's not that important.
As bad as I say, I mean it. It's not that important. What's important is learning. Learning is the important thing. So how do you learn? You learn by executing quickly. And then you see what works and what doesn't work. And then you iterate. The best strategy is just getting something out there. And what I like to say is, you know it's going to be wrong. Don't aim for it to be the right strategy. It's always going to be the wrong strategy. Think about yourself. You're always going to have the wrong strategy. It's just a question of how quickly you could go from the wrong strategy to an okay strategy to a great strategy. And that just means constant iteration and changing. And if you end up just launching with this amazing strategy, whatever the hell that means, you know what? You just got lucky. And if that's your if that's your plan of how you're going to succeed because you got lucky, you know, that's not the way to succeed. So it's just like, continue to get things out there, get ideas out there, change new things, and then get feedback constantly. And that's how you're going to build that right strategy ultimately. So yeah, I am super, in fact, one of my interview questions when I meet with executives, Jamie, I never told people this before, but I say, except for my interviews, I say, so are you more of a strategy or execution person? And if they say strategy, they're out. I literally don't hire people that are, because that means that they'd rather go into a room for a while. They'd rather think big ideas. Like, no, the best strategy is constant execution and learning and iterating.
Good to know.
Like Vinaya said, plan big, progress small. Love that, Vinaya.
Yeah, that's really
and
good.
Tom.
All right. So another phrase you use throughout the book is be surprised only by being surprised. And again, I think, you know, for people leading communities, you never know what's around the corner. And at some point you start to realize, like, actually, I need to stop getting upset or surprised by these things that are happening, because, yeah, you'll tear yourself into knots, really. So, yeah, you know, how can we relate to this in our day-to-day, and how do we deal with these surprises that are always coming?
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of, again, just experience is when people aren't experienced and something happens, they're like, oh my God, this guy is falling, this is terrible. You know, and it's just, you know, Jamie, you've done a lot of things. Tom, Lori, you've all done so many things. Everyone here has done so many different things that when something happens because you've seen those experiences before, it's so important to have a perspective. And the reality is that surprises continuously happen. Bad things happen. Good surprises happen too. But more often, bad surprises will keep happening. You just got to, like, it happened? Okay, let's move on. Like, right before COVID, I was supposed to go to, I was supposed to be Passover in Israel. And the day before Passover, I was COVID positive, and our entire plans were canceled. So I was just like, okay, it happened. Now how are we going to make ourselves successful? And in terms of the surprising thing, I would just say our job as leaders, and every single person in this discussion is a leader. Your job is to not surprise people. Your job is to make sure that people in your community aren't surprised, that the people that you work for, the people you work with aren't surprised. And if you have just like a no surprise philosophy, you're like, that's just a good like mantra to kind of live by. I'm going to surprise no one. If you surprise no one, don't surprise your spouse, don't surprise your children. Like, anytime there's a surprise, the best thing I try to do is like, how did I fail? What did I do wrong that caused you to be surprised? Because it's always something I probably could have done better to have minimized the surprise.
Right. And, you know, it might sound like it competes with that, but, you know, we talk about keeping your options open, which was one of the other big takeaways I took from the book, you know, and because although you're talking about a specific period of time, you know, you're also talking right from your own personal life, you know, from very early on about, you know, becoming a CEO and kind of, you know, keeping your options open. And again, that really resonated because I think having the experiences. So I just went through something with COVID. It was taking a new job, moved to a new country, and then, you know, kind of COVID happened and you're kind of a bit isolated, but it gave us the chance to come back. Now, if I hadn't taken that job, if I hadn't gone for that thing, never would have happened. I wouldn't be standing here now, blah, 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 on you go. So yeah, it's interesting, you know, that keeping your options open was something you clearly did at a very early stage.
And by the way, the best way to keep your options open is to continue in community leadership. I mean it. All of us. Why? Because when you're in a community, You're building relationships with dozens or hundreds of different people, and all of them are creating options for yourself, personal options, professional options, career options. The best options are created through people. And when you're a leader, you create even more options for yourself. So I think that what you are all doing is create, what's the worst? Because think about the opposite. What's the way to close off lots of options? So sit by yourself in a room watching TV, let's say, all day long. Writing strategy, yes, writing strategy while watching Netflix all day and doing nothing and talking to no one. What options are you creating? Nothing. Whereas the opposite of that is building relationships with people, talking to people, helping people. When you help people, you're creating an amazing number of options for yourself. Every time you help someone, it's yet another option you're creating for yourself, for them to want to help you, not to need to help you, not to do something back for you, but them to want to help you kind of later on, every time you help someone.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to what you said before around, sort of serving your community. There's times you need to be directional, but if you're trying to get, more community-driven decisions, or you're trying to empower people and bring them in, then it's this inverted pyramid idea where you're at the bottom and everyone else is above you, and you're really serving them. And I think when you're running communities, that's really what you're trying to do, is you're trying to serve other people and get them to lead their own groups and their own communities.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. You could say it's the opposite. These are the opposite, David. Being directive in an island and servant leadership are the opposite. They're not, though, because sometimes the best way to serve is to be willing to have people dislike you. The best way to serve is to be willing to make the right decision, and that's the best way to serve. It's not to, in the short term, make people happy, right? You want people happy ultimately, of course, but it's all about serving and seeing yourself, again, bottom org chart, bottom of the pyramid, and sometimes that service is can make you unpopular.
Another thing that you come back to quite a lot is kind of this, in the moment kind of presence, like really valuing kind of what you've got as well. And reading your story, usual, most of us don't have to go through quite as much trauma, but everyone has their own trauma and their own things that they're going through. But it was really nicely put. You quote Wayne Dyer saying, "When you dance, your purpose is not to get to a certain place on the floor, it's to enjoy each step along the way." And then at the very end of the book, you also deliberately, instead of an acknowledgement section, you have a gratitude section. Can you tell us a little bit about, this focus on gratitude?
Yeah, so I just think one of the important things for all of us is to live happy lives. I know we all think that, but just that's the goal, is live a happy life. The ways to live a happy life are helping people. You live a happy life. Doing things, those things are helpful. But the problem for many people is just the lens that we look at things through. The exact same thing can happen to Tom, Jamie, Lori, and I. The exact same event. Exact same. And some of us will be like, wow, we're so lucky that didn't happen earlier. Or I got into a car accident, God forbid. I'm so lucky that I just happened to have broken my arm. Oh, I'm so lucky. It could have been so much worse. Or I can't believe I broke my arm. I can't play sports, or I can't hold my child, for the next 3 months. Everything is about that lens. And the best lens that you could have in life is the gratitude lens. Is to say in the morning, I have so much gratitude for being in the position that I'm in, for how lucky I am to live in this world in this century when I don't have to spend 3 hours a day doing clothes washing, if I lived or I wouldn't have been conscripted into an army at 18 years old, if I lived just 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Wouldn't have the freedoms that we have, at least in many of the countries that we live in, but not all the countries that we live in today. So it's just, gratitude is literally, to me, the number one formula for happiness. I care about happiness. I want to achieve happiness. Gratitude is the path.
Well, it's really nice, and it's a great way for me to see if Tom or Laurie, have you got any questions you'd like to ask? I'm going to have a look at the Q&A.
I just say last things to say, Jamie, on this one before Tom, Laurie, which is just the reason why happiness is so important. Also, it's not just for selfish, hedonistic type reasons. It's because if you're happy, it positively influences also other people around you to be happy. You will have happier spouses, happier children, happier friends. People will want to spend time with you. like so many positive things are a result of you being happy as well. So it's not just for yourself. It helps many others.
Yeah, kind of the flywheel, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. Great things end up happening to you as well because you're happy. Sorry, Tom, Laurie.
Sure. If it's okay, I'll jump in first. I have just one question. You know, reading your book, hearing all the things you've got going on. Maybe it's a strange question, but how on earth do you do everything? Like, what does your process look like when you're achieving all these things? And is there anything you could share from that perspective?
Sure. So a couple of things. Thank you for asking that, Tom. Number one is, I think the concept of deprioritization is more important than prioritization is something really important. So what I mean by that is, in order to free up time to do lots of great things, you have a podcast, I'm a professor, wrote a book, blah, blah, blah. You have to not do a lot of other things. So like the first thing to do is say, what are the things that lots of people do that I'm not going to do? So I don't want, I'm not to say the TV's bad, but I don't play video games. Most people at 47 don't play video games, but I watch no TV except for with my wife. We're like cuddling and chilling or just like watching something relaxing. It's kind of more a form of like bonding, shall we say. But I watch almost no TV. At various points in my life when my kids were young, I really deprioritized friends consciously, intentionally, because I said my relationship with my spouse is most important, my children are more important, and my work. And I need to deprioritize friendships, because if I prioritize friendships over kids, I don't feel good about that. Doesn't mean you have no friends. It just means you're deprioritizing it. So I think step number one, Tom, is to figure out in your life what things you could stop doing to free up time. And by the way, sleep should not be one of them. Meaning I sleep 8 hours a day, 7 to 8 hours a day, every night. Sleep is extremely, extremely important to mental health, to physical health, and should not be sacrificed in order to quote unquote do more. The other thing, Tom, that I do a lot of is just, I really believe in the ROT, return on time concept. There are certain things you could spend time doing that give you time back, and certain things you could spend time doing that actually suck you dry and just like exhaust you, and you want to avoid those things. So what are the things for me that gives me time back? Exercise. So every single morning, pretty much, I'm exercising. If I'm not exercising in the morning, I'm exercising in the afternoon. But like you could tell I'm energetic. The reason I have so much energy, I believe, is because I invest in exercise. Then I have so much more energy because of that. Now, I also don't eat pizza, ever. No pizza. I barely have much like red meat and burgers, because when I have like heavy food, I feel like really lethargic afterwards. So it's just like these basic things of just knowing which things give you energy and which things take away energy. There are certain people that I used to talk to a lot. They took energy away from me. I felt drained. I felt exhausted by talking to those people. And some of the people are family, so you stay connected to them and you don't eliminate them, but you just talk to them less, perhaps, if it destroys energy. So that's what I would say, Tom. I would say deprioritize certain things, find what gives you energy and finds what takes away energy, and do a lot more of the giving energy, and eat healthy, sleep a lot, and exercise, and it really does pay off.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was really detailed and really valuable. Thank you.
Oh, last one, hydration. People walk around dehydrated all the time. Drink voluminous amounts of water. Yes, voluminous amounts of, I'm telling you, people don't realize that they're hydrated. So the first thing I do is I wake up, I fill a giant glass with water. I put these electrolyte drops in the water to give it even more, guzzle the entire thing, then fill it up again, then guzzle it a second time. And then if I don't have water that much the rest of the day, I just had like a giant amounts of water, so I'm okay. Then I probably go to the bathroom every hour because of all that water.
Half your day. Well, that's really good. Laurie, a question, or shall I get someone up?
I think I'd like to see the floor to Brian Piper, if that's okay. I've had a chance to ask David questions. You've covered a lot of mine, so I think Brian wants to talk, and I know other folks do too. So,
yeah, let's get Brian up here, right? Let's see if this works.
I try to get as many things done in the morning first, so that way I check the box and I don't have to think about them later on. So I really like in the weekends waking up early and then going for a run. Then I got all the good things done that I needed to get done. Brian, I was just buying some time while Brian came on.
Here we go. Look at that. Yeah. All right. How's it going? Fantastic to see you again, David.
Yeah.
Been, enjoying the conversation. Excellent. Love the Keep Connected podcast and looking forward to reading the book. Was able to use some of the networking tips you talked about with Susan McPherson at a conference I was just at last week. So it was perfect timing. But
Nice.
I wanted to ask you the questions that you always ask your guests at the end.
No one's ever done that. Okay, let's hear it.
So if you could go any time and place, where and when would you go?
Okay, so my answer is I grew up with a very, very strong connection to this. Unfortunately, it's controversial, but to Israel, and my oldest son, for example, lives in Israel, made Aliyah. My second son is doing a gap year in Israel, so it's very connected to the country. And there was a certain moment in 1948, right after the Holocaust, really, where Israel declared a state of independence and became a country for the first time, allowing people who had gone through so much trauma to be able to have their own future, and like makes me even cry or get goosebumps. I want to be in Israel in 1948 when David Ben-Gurion, the prime minister, is kind of announcing to the world that the United Nations have just voted in favor of having a homeland for the first time in its history.
Awesome. I'm not hoping this will be in the book, but what's the biggest decision that you've made with the biggest impact on your life?
Biggest decision that I've ever made. Who I married, my wife. Everything, your wife, my spouse is everything. She's my best friend. Married almost 23 years this June. And right before this, she said, "When can we take a walk?" And that's going to be my highlight of my day, when we take a walk together, later on. And children, family, everything is that's the biggest impact by far for everything.
Awesome. And what's on your bucket list?
Okay, so I've hiked Kilimanjaro, I've done triathlons, I've done all these other things, but the biggest thing right now on my bucket, so really it's to hit 100 countries before I die. So I'm 47 years old, I'm at 48 countries, so I need to be one more country, because I'm not going to be hitting many countries from like age 90 to 100, likely. So I always need to be like at least one country beyond, where I'm at. So Jamie, I need to get to Scotland. I haven't been to Scotland yet. And it's just hitting 100 countries is kind of my goal, but it's not to hit a country. Like, that's stupid. It's to meet the people at the country. It's to talk to people. Let's have a beer, like, at the country. Forget all the tourist spots. I couldn't care less. I just want to like sit down and have beer and meet people in as many different places as possible and learn from as many people as I can. And by the way, when you go to these countries, oftentimes go back to the gratitude thing that we talked about. Like, that's how you also times have gratitude. When I'm going to, in Tanzania and walking around and being like, I am so lucky. I cannot believe the way that so many of these people are living. And oh, by the way, there's so much happier than so many people like in New York that are wealthy and angry and things like that. So that's my answer.
Awesome. Lori, Jamie, Tom, fantastic discussion. And one final question before I get out. What do you most want to be remembered for?
That is great. I would like to be remembered as someone who lived up to their potential. I don't know what my potential is, but I feel like I was given gifts, and I would like to not feel like I squandered those gifts.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was great. Time, I think, for another one. Venia.
Hours, by the way, because I'm loving this more than I know no one else will, but like, I'll be out by myself just talking to myself here. Who's next?
Well, let's see if Venia wants to come up here. I don't know if I said your name right here. Let me just pull you up. Here she comes.
Brian, it's good seeing you again.
You as well.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, Venia. You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, we can't see you either.
Oh no. Okay. One moment.
Oh, now we.
Hey.
Hey.
Also looks terrible. Let's just get that giant white off the
Yeah, you can see the graphics on the wall behind you. It's good.
Huh?
You see all the pictures on the wall. They look like Grammy. Whatever. Not going to go.
I tend to live my life a lot by a lot of like really small shortcut statements. Truth is in the pattern, power is in the pattern. First build small, then build big. Like this book is covered in them. And I have found in my life that it's very different learning one of those and constantly bringing it up, and then actually living it and committing yourself to those statements, because oftentimes you doubt them. So my biggest question to you is, throughout the course of the book, what is the one you struggle the most to live by despite having learned your lesson?
God, that's so good. Wow. And we talked about the being like part, but that probably isn't the one I struggled the most with. It was really like, be confident almost. I know that's just like a pithy, I don't know if that's the right one, but it was so easy to really doubt myself continuously. And like the example that the quote that Jamie said, and feel like I was a failure. You know, Scott Heiferman, who many people know here, who's the founder of Meetup, you know, at different times had kind of intimated to me, at the very least, he's like, he felt like he was a failure for not being able to make Meetup bigger, make Meetup more. Of course, he's far from failure. He's one of the most successful and incredible individuals kind of out there to have built Meetup. But it takes such like thick skin, shall we say, to like fail and fail and fail, or have people say, and not see the results of the work that you're doing, or have Adam Newman think you're doing a terrible job at WeWork because you're not growing to $1 billion overnight. And it's just to not internalize and personalize that, I think, was the biggest challenge for me, because to go from like this thing that I did that failed is one thing, but then to say, because of this thing that I did, I am a failure. That's something else. And too often it's very easily to take an experience and to personalize that experience and think that that's, you know, who you are. And I think I was able throughout to try to remove myself from it and say, not to give myself excuses and whatever, but to say like, that's not who I am. And, you know, there's this website called Blind, apparently, where people say bad things about you. Former employees, and people just said to me, David, don't go there. They're just making up terrible things that are just not true. Don't go there. Don't expose yourself to that. It's just really negative. So I would say not personalizing and was very, very hard. And also I would say the last one I would say is just continuing to stay as optimistic as possible, because I felt like so much was on my back, even though maybe that wasn't so true. But like if I lost faith and I just lost optimism completely, that I would take 100, 150 people like down with me, and then no one would be able to be optimistic if the leader's not optimistic, because they would all be looking at me as kind of the person in charge, and I'd have to, and if I kind of, I mean, it's not to give you the perfect example, but look at what's going on in the Ukraine. I'm not going to get political at all, but look at what kind of a leader. I'm going to mispronounce his name, but the head of the Ukraine is, and like so much, look at the impact that he has as a leader in the optimism that he's giving his people. And that was hard. That was hard. When things are really painful and difficult, it's hard to like show up and quote unquote, you know, be the positive type person that sometimes leaders need.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks, David. We're at time. I feel like we could keep talking for quite some time, and I would love to catch up with you, hopefully one day in real life. But yeah, really, just a big thanks from me, and I'm sure from everyone else that came along today, David, for giving us your time.
Thank you. Can I say one last thing, Jamie, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
I apologize. Last thing is just this, which is, if the opportunity presents itself and you're looking for someone, forget the book thing, for just to speak at a community event or to be at a community event, for anyone who's listening, then I really do enjoy meeting with people and being part of communities. So just kind of let me know. I just was in Austin at a Meetup event, and it was very meaningful. And I spoke about kind of whatever I spoke about, the importance of community and the power of community. So feel free to let me know if that's something that could be of interest to you, even in Scotland, wherever it may be. It would give me a lot of joy to be able to be part of your communities as well.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if you make your travel plans and you start hitting around the globe, let us know. I'm sure we can organize an event. It'd be great to have you along.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right. And thanks, Tom. Thanks, Laurie. And thanks, everyone else, for coming tonight. Enjoy the rest of your days. Really appreciate it. All the best, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.